will talk Nebraska. We will talk a ton Nebraska. But as Steve mentioned in the private chat, I think Ohio State fans would appreciate us staying back there in week 4 last weekend for a final score that was even more satisfying than 77-5. It was 35-14, and it wasn't anywhere close to being that close. And because, Kevin, you said Wisconsin was going to run away with this game and win by at least 17 points, I will do you the honors of talking about Wisconsin's route.
Sorry, Gerd. Me.
It certainly wasn't me, because I said Michigan was going to win that game.
Before the game, the Hell Wagons had a nice little tailgate with some cupcakes and hot dogs and everything else, and we had the game on there. And I may have been full of bravado here on Mark Rogers' show, but when I was there, it's like, well, it's not like this game's ever going to be 28-0, which it was. I was surprised more with how inept Michigan looked than how great Wisconsin looked. And I think we're still going to need to see a little bit more both teams before we really know what's what. But as we kind of alluded to on this show, Charbonnet, he was window dressing. He really didn't play. They, for whatever reason, didn't until garbage time throw it up there for the receivers for Michigan, and they made some plays at that point. But it was a real anemic-looking offense. The offensive line definitely struggled, and Jonathan Taylor did Jonathan Taylor type of things. And, of course, it has to come at me. I'll own when I take the L. I've been so critical of Jack Cohn, but he looked pretty good in that game. But I think he's going to have to play some more stout defenses before I'm going to really, buy an admission to the Marching and Chowder Society for Jack Cohn, because that Michigan defense, I'm sorry, is just not very good in terms of they just don't have the depth of talent that they had last year. And could they be there by the end of the season when they play Ohio State? Time will tell, but I'm going to lean towards saying no. I just don't think they have the horses to do it.
And the running game's not going to be working quite as well in future games, you would think, for Jack Cohn to be able to just kind of play action off of that and benefit from the wide open spaces that creates. Steve, the team up north having some issues.
Yeah, this, as I joked routinely off and on, just imagine if this didn't happen to be their year, as they portrayed that it was going to be their year long and long over and again. But, all the problems that we've talked about these many years came home to roost. They're not physical enough. When Donovan Peoples-Jones doesn't play, they're not dynamic enough. People want to give all this, lay all this at Shea Patterson's feet. And I just don't think that they've surrounded him with enough to where you can lay all this at his feet. And, it's easy to beat a dead horse, but when you think about this, and I talked about this in the off season when I did a survey of the recruiting classes, the material that you put in equals the result you're going to get out. There's a reason why Michigan is not mentioned in the same breath right now as Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State. It's because they don't have the talent to match up with those other teams. Maybe on one given Saturday out of 10, they'll pull off an upset. But week in and week out, they're not going to beat top teams. And what we saw with Wisconsin was what you do what you do when the chips are down and everybody doubts you, coming off of what was for them a terrible season last year, I think 8-5, when they're accustomed to winning 10, 11, 12 games. They were 12-0 2 years ago when they played Ohio State. I think they then won their bowl game to finish 13-1, I believe. They aspire for great things. And that is what you saw Chris and his staff did. They harnessed the human spirit, and they put a team that would have beaten anybody on the field last Saturday, anybody in the country that would have matched up with them, they probably would have beaten them. And that's the kind of beating that they put on Michigan. And Michigan is not capable of rising to that level right now. And they've got some very difficult games ahead of them. What is it? In 2 weeks, they play Iowa, or a week and a half, they play Iowa. Still have to play Penn State, Michigan State, Maryland is even possibly in play now on them. Indiana's been dying to break through against them. Then Ohio State at the end. I mean, I just wonder if we're witnessing the beginning of the end for Jim Harbaugh because, all as I like to say, the Dodds in the 40s have come out and basically identified that he's not the guy and the emperor has no clothes. And 5 years into this, they're no better off than they were when he got there. And I was doing a chat the other night. People were talking about, Michigan this, Michigan that. I go, guys, Minnesota in the 30s and 40s won national championships. And in the 7 decades since then, they've been middle of the road. Are we seeing the Minnesotification of the Michigan football program? I don't know because they very well could come to Columbus 10-1, or they very well could come to Columbus 7-4. I mean, it's within the realm of possibility. And they were talking national championship with this group. So some people were. I don't know. I'll go back to what I said in the offseason. They have to beat Ohio State one time before I would ever pick them to win the division. They have to beat Ohio State one time and show me that they can do it. And this team is currently put together. Maybe Peoples-Jones makes a difference if he gets back in there to provide a vertical threat. But defensively, they had no answer. Didn't they get outgained on the ground like 320-40 or something? They had no answer. I don't know, Tony. I know you're dying to talk Michigan. You write a Michigan column every week, and I'm sure you've got some talking points on this as well.
Mark, you had something to say?
You know what, Tony? Take it away. You've been waiting. You deserve it. Go to it. I'll have something to say, I'm sure.
I'll say, Steve and Kevin were not the only people enjoying cupcakes at 12 o'clock on Saturday because Wisconsin's offensive line had quite a few of them themselves. And Michigan's defensive line, they played 6 scholarship defensive linemen in that game. One is a former fullback. Another is a transfer from Central Michigan, a graduate transfer. So you have 6 guys. Ohio State was without 4 scholarship defensive linemen last week. They still played 10. And they threw in an 11th walk-on who had a half a tackle for loss. So the lack of recruiting at Michigan, they have so many washouts. Their 2017 class, I think they signed 9 defensive linemen, including the fullback Ben Martin, and I think that's his name. But anyway, those 9 guys, I think there's like 2 or 3 left, and none of them, they have no impact players on defense. Cornerback Lavert Hill might be their most impactful guy. Khaleke Hudson was good 2 years ago, had 8 tackles for loss in 1 game, but is now just a guy, and the entire defense is just a guy. 3rd and short against Wisconsin, they were playing 2 defensive linemen and 4 linebackers, and they were just getting rolled. And on a 4th and goal, or they were or on a goal line situation, they again had an inside linebacker who is a former walk-on safety, Jordan Glasgow, basically playing 3 technique defensive tackle. And it's easy to, what happened. He got pushed back 4 yards into the end zone. And this, I don't know, the talent isn't there. We thought maybe you have a lot of faith that Don Brown can just reload. They did it 2 years ago when they replaced like 10 starters, but then you had Devin Bush and Rashawn Gary coming in and stuff like that. And they don't have that this year because the recruiting isn't there. And even their best recruits aren't playing. Guys like Chris Hinton is a top 30 defensive end. He doesn't play. Daxton Hill, 5-star safety. He doesn't play. And, you wonder what this transfer portal is going to look like for Michigan in December. I don't, I foresee some mass casualties there because as I wrote in Michigan Monday, it's just a joyless program. You look at the players, nobody looks like they're having a good time. Jim Harbaugh looks miserable. It just looks like a terrible place to be right now. And I don't know how you turn that around with Jim Harbaugh, because I think this is his 5th year. This is what Michigan is under him. But again, this is also what Michigan is. They're not national title contenders. They're 9-10 win max. And every decade, they make a push. 2006, they made a push. They were number 2. 2016, I think there were 20 or number 3 when Ohio State played them. So it takes them a while, and they finally get there. But they're not. I mean, Michigan State has been in the playoffs. Michigan State has won Big Ten titles. Michigan hasn't. I don't know. Can Matt Campbell take Michigan further than Jim Harbaugh? Maybe. I think Jim Harbaugh is tapped out. He's maxed out, and he just looks like he'd rather be golfing or playing with his kids.
Yeah, I checked out the news conference from Jim Harbaugh, and what can he say? Because he's got to protect his players, he's got to take as much blame as possible, and ultimately he is responsible for what's going on. But he said all the cliched things. It's not acceptable, it's not good enough. The players won't tolerate it. They don't believe it's good enough. I'm saying it's not good enough. We weren't good enough. We were out coached. We were out schemed. We were out hustled. We were outplayed. Well, as soon as you bring up the term out hustled, then that points to the players. Are the players not trying hard enough? And as soon as you say out schemed, that comes right back at him to say, why are you out schemed? You should be out coaching the other coaching staff. So, but of course, at one point when he was asked about details, he says, well, I could go through all the details, but I don't know that you want me to go through all the details. Please go through the details. Let us know, where are you being out hustled and out schemed? Because that points right to coaches and players. And it's obviously that's the case, because you're supposed to be more talented than that Wisconsin team. But I think Tony spoke to it. All three of you, I believe, spoke to it. When Iowa shows up, they're not as talented as Michigan, but Wisconsin wasn't supposed to be either. But we know one thing out of Iowa: they know who they are, they know what they're going to do, they know what their identity is, and they're going to play their rear ends off. And Michigan better buckle up and be ready for that game.
This is the last week. Michigan plays Rutgers this week. This will be the last week they do not play an opponent that will come in and expect to beat Michigan. When Iowa comes in, they'll expect to beat them. When Michigan goes to Illinois, they will think they have a chance to win. When Michigan goes to Maryland, they will think they have a chance to win. Everybody that plays Michigan this year, after seeing what they've done and looking at the talent that they have up front, is going to think that they have a real good shot to beat Michigan. And sometimes that's half the battle, because when you go into a game thinking, you know what, we're not going to be able to beat them, you're not. And when you go in with that confidence that if Army can do it, almost, and if Wisconsin can do it that easily, Iowa is a poor man's Wisconsin. Why can't they do it? I think there's a lot of confidence going around the Big Ten when it comes to Michigan right now.
Absolutely. Army trotted out a field goal kicker, a freshman who had never tried a collegiate attempt. So if he hits, Michigan did nothing to avert the kick. If he connects, it's really ugly right now. But that Wisconsin rear end kick, I did watch that game. Or at least I watched the first. I thought I was buckled in to watch what I thought was going to be the game of the weekend, even more so than Georgia and Notre Dame. But what I got was just an annihilation in every way, shape, or form. And I didn't watch anything past halftime of that game.